I still remember the exact sound of my phone vibrating against the wooden nightstand. It was 2:17 in the morning. At first, I ignored it. I had barely slept for weeks, and when sleep finally came, I had learned not to let anything interrupt it. But then it rang again, and again. Something about that third vibration made my chest tighten. I reached over in the darkness, my eyes still heavy, and looked at the screen. It was her mother. My heart stopped. Linda Harper had never called me this late. In the 8 years I had known her daughter, I could count on one hand the number of times she had ever called me directly. I answered immediately. Hello. What I heard next made every ounce of sleep disappear from my body. Her voice was shaking. Daniel, I need you to listen carefully. The fear in her voice sent a chill down my spine. Is everything okay? There was silence for a moment. Then she whispered something I never expected to hear. She made a terrible mistake. I sat upright in bed instantly. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. I hadn't heard my wife's name spoken in months. Not since the divorce papers had been finalized. Not since the woman I loved more than anything had looked me in the eyes and told me she no longer wanted this marriage. No longer wanted me. I swallowed hard. What happened? Her mother began crying softly. She's been hiding something from everyone. And tonight, everything fell apart. My fingers tightened around the phone. The memories came rushing back faster than I could stop them. 3 months earlier, I had been sitting across from my wife, Emily, at the kitchen table we had bought together after our wedding. The same kitchen where we used to dance while making dinner. The same place where she once told me she couldn't imagine growing old without me. But that night, she wouldn't even look at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the divorce papers lying between us. I remember asking her the question I had been asking for weeks. Why are you doing this? She sighed heavily. I'm not happy anymore. I stared at her, waiting for more. Waiting for an explanation. Waiting for anything that would make sense. But nothing came. 8 years. 8 years together reduced to 5 empty words. I'm not happy anymore. I remember laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because sometimes pain reaches a point where your mind doesn't know how else to react. I asked if there was someone else. She said no. I asked if I had done something wrong. She said no. I asked if she still loved me. That was the only question she refused to answer. 2 weeks later, she moved out. A month after that, the divorce was finalized. And just like that, the woman who had once promised forever became a stranger. I had spent every day since then trying to learn how to breathe without her, trying to figure out how someone could erase years of love so easily, trying to understand why I had not been enough. And now, her mother was calling me in the middle of the night, saying everything had fallen apart. I forced myself back to reality. What happened to Emily? Her mother took a shaky breath. She found out the truth about someone she trusted, and she's broken, Daniel. I frowned. What truth? Another silence. Then Linda said words I wasn't prepared for. She never wanted to leave you. I froze. My entire body went numb. What? She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. I stood up so fast I nearly knocked the lamp over. My mind was racing. That makes no sense. Her mother was crying harder now. She thought she was protecting you. I couldn't understand anything. Protecting me from what? Linda finally told me everything. Months before the divorce, Emily had learned devastating information about my company. I had been unknowingly involved in a financial scandal created by one of my business partners. If the situation exploded publicly, anyone connected to me could lose everything. Emily had discovered that certain people were preparing legal action that could destroy our finances completely. She had panicked. She believed staying married to me would mean both of us losing everything we had built. So she made the impossible decision. She filed for divorce quietly. She pushed me away. She let me hate her. Because, in her mind, if we were no longer legally tied together, I would face the storm alone while she protected what little future I still had. I couldn't breathe. Every painful memory suddenly looked different. The coldness in her eyes. The distance. The silence. The way her hands had trembled while signing those papers. It hadn't been indifference. It had been heartbreak. She had sacrificed us because she thought she had no other choice. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall. Tears burned behind my eyes. Why didn't she tell me? Linda's voice cracked. Because she thought you'd stop her. I covered my face with both hands. Months of anger suddenly turned into unbearable guilt. I had spent every day believing she had stopped loving me. Meanwhile, she had been carrying the pain alone. Then Linda said the words that truly shattered me. She needs you. I looked up instantly. What do you mean? She's at the hospital. Everything inside me stopped. I grabbed my keys without thinking. The drive there felt endless. The streets were empty. The entire city felt frozen. My thoughts wouldn't stop racing. I kept replaying our last conversation. The final goodbye. The way I had looked at her with resentment. The way I had walked away without fighting harder. When I reached the hospital, Linda was waiting near the entrance. The moment she saw me, she hugged me tightly. Then she pointed toward a room down the hall. She hasn't stopped asking for you. My legs felt weak. I walked slowly toward the door. And there she was, Emily, sitting on the hospital bed. Her eyes were red. Her face looked pale. But somehow, she still looked like home. She turned her head. The second she saw me, tears immediately filled her eyes. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered the words I had been desperate to hear for months. I'm so sorry. I stepped closer. My chest hurt. Why didn't you tell me? She broke down completely. Because I couldn't bear watching everything destroy you. I shook my head. You thought losing you wouldn't destroy me? She started crying harder. I sat beside her. For the first time in months, there was no anger between us. Only pain. Raw, unbearable pain. She looked at me with trembling lips. I thought if I left, I could save your future. I reached for her hand instinctively. The same hand I had held on our wedding day. The same hand I thought I had lost forever. You were my future. Her entire face crumbled. She leaned forward and buried herself against my chest. And suddenly months of heartbreak exploded all at once. I held her while she cried harder than I had ever seen. And then I realized something terrifying. I had never stopped loving her. Not for a second. Not through the divorce. Not through the anger. Not through the loneliness. Love had simply been buried underneath pain. She pulled back slightly and looked at me. I know I don't deserve another chance. I stared into her eyes. The eyes I once imagined growing old beside. And I realized something. Life doesn't always break people because love disappeared. Sometimes love survives impossible choices. Sometimes people make terrible decisions while trying to protect the ones they care about. I brushed tears from her face. You hurt me more than I thought possible. She nodded silently. I know. I took a deep breath. But I understand now. She stared at me, almost afraid to hope. I smiled through tears. I never wanted our story to end. She covered her mouth and started crying again. And for the first time in months, I smiled too. Weeks passed. The legal issues surrounding my company were cleared after investigators proved I had no involvement. The nightmare Emily feared never happened. But something far more important was happening. We were finding our way back to each other. Slowly, carefully, healing wounds neither of us knew how to repair. There were difficult conversations. There were painful memories. There were nights filled with silence as we learned to trust again. But little by little, we started remembering who we used to be. One evening, 6 months later, I took Emily back to the lake where I had proposed years earlier. The sunset reflected across the water exactly the way it had that day. She stood beside me quietly. Then she looked at me and smiled softly. I still can't believe you forgave me. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I reached into my jacket pocket. Her eyes widened immediately because she recognized the small velvet box, the same one I had never thrown away after the divorce. I opened it slowly. Inside sat the wedding ring she once returned. Her hands flew to her face. Tears instantly formed. I looked directly into her eyes. You once broke my heart trying to protect me. She began crying quietly. I continued. But even after losing everything, there was one thing I never stopped believing. She whispered softly, "What's that?" I smiled. "That you are always the love of my life." She broke completely. I slipped the ring onto her trembling finger. And as she threw her arms around me, I realized something beautiful. Sometimes the worst endings are not endings at all. Sometimes heartbreak is simply the painful road that leads people back to where they were always meant to be. And sometimes a phone call in the middle of the night changes everything. Not by destroying what was broken, but by giving broken hearts a second chance to heal. That night, I thought I was waking up to tragedy. I had no idea I was waking up to the beginning of our new life together.